Chosen one, stop, right now. Before you read another word, before you scroll past this, before you let your thumb carry you to the next thing, I need you to understand what is happening in this specific moment. You are not supposed to be here, not in the sense that you stumbled here accidentally, in the opposite sense. You were specifically positioned to arrive at this exact word, at this exact moment. And what I am about to tell you is the thing that God said cannot wait any longer. Not until you feel more ready, not until your circumstances shift, not until you have processed the previous word that was sent to you. Now, today, before anything else, there are people who will scroll past this message, many of them. And for those people, the moment this message was positioned to create will close, not permanently, but it will close for this season. Because what God delivers in specific windows of urgency cannot be re-delivered in the same form after the window passes. The window passes. The message was real. And the person who scrolled past it will feel the absence of what was inside it without ever being able to name what they missed. You stopped, which means the window is open. And I'm going to make sure that what was placed in this window reaches you completely before it closes. I want to say something about the feeling that arrived when you read the word stop, because it was not a neutral feeling. There was a specific quality of recognition in it. Not quite fear, not quite excitement. Something between the two. A quality that the body produces when it encounters something that is simultaneously important and costly. The importance and the cost arriving at the same moment. That is the signature of a divine interruption, not the signature of an inspirational message, not the signature of a word that costs nothing to receive. A divine interruption arrives with a weight that the ordinary message does not carry. Because the ordinary message is delivering information, the divine interruption is delivering a requirement, and the body knows the difference before the mind has processed what the requirement is. You felt it, and you are still here. Both of those things matter. I want to tell you the specific reason God stopped you here, rather than in any of the other places you moved through today, because it was not arbitrary. Because the specific thing that needed to reach you today is a thing that cannot be delivered in general terms. It requires a specific context, a specific posture, a specific form of attention. And all three of those elements are present in the person who has stopped scrolling in the middle of their day because something said stop. The specific thing I am about to tell you is not comfortable. I want to be honest about that before I tell you. What God interrupts the ordinary movement of a day to say is almost never the thing the person was hoping to hear on that particular day. It is rarely the confirmation that the path they are on is perfectly aligned. It is rarely the word that produces relief without requiring anything in return. What God stops you to say is the thing that requires you to do something different from what you have been doing. The thing that requires a decision. The thing that cannot be delayed without cost. You stopped, which means some part of you already knows that the word coming is the one that requires a decision, and the part of you that knows that is the part that matters most in this moment. Let me show you the structure of what has been happening in your life that made this specific interruption necessary, because it did not come out of nowhere. The word that God is delivering through this message today is the culmination of a sequence of attempts to get your attention that have been increasing in urgency over the period you know. The first attempt to reach you was through discomfort, not catastrophic disruption. A persistent, low-level awareness that something in the current direction of your life is not fully aligned with where you are supposed to go. That discomfort has been present. You recognized it, and you moved forward in the current direction anyway, because the cost of adjusting the direction was not yet visible enough to justify the disruption it would require. The second attempt was through an increase in that discomfort. The signal that something is misaligned was not simply maintained at the previous level, it was amplified. Events arrived that made the misalignment more visible. Conversations occurred. Doors that should have opened did not open. Doors that should have stayed closed opened unexpectedly. The pattern of the misalignment became more legible, and still, the decision to adjust did not happen. The third attempt was through the specific things you have been carrying for the past few weeks. The weight that has been increasing without a clear source. The specific quality of feeling that something is waiting for your response and the response has not been given. That weight is the third attempt, and this message is the fourth. I want to pause on the fourth attempt specifically, because what makes the fourth attempt different from the first three is not the content of the message. The content has been consistent across all four. The calling has not changed. The direction has not changed. The requirement has not changed. What is different about the fourth attempt is that it arrives with the accumulated weight of all three previous attempts behind it. The urgency of the fourth attempt is not because the situation has become more dramatic. It is because the cost of another partial response has become more visible. The first time God tries to reach you with a course correction, the cost of not responding is small. The direction has not yet departed far enough from the correct one to have produced significant consequences. The second time, the cost is slightly larger. The third time, it is larger still. And by the fourth time, the cost of another non-response is visible enough that the urgency with which the message arrives is proportional to that cost. God is not panicking, but God is not being casual about this either. The urgency is real, and the reason you stopped is because some part of you already understood that. The chosen one, who is in the position I am describing right now, is in a specific kind of danger that is not dramatic enough to feel urgent, but is real enough to produce significant cost over time. The danger is not external. The danger is the drift that happens when a person with a genuine calling continues to move in a direction that is slightly off from the direction the calling requires for long enough that the slight misalignment becomes a substantial one. The drift is almost invisible while it is happening. It does not announce itself. The person who is drifting does not feel themselves drifting. They feel themselves moving. Movement feels like progress. The difference between movement in the right direction and movement in the slightly wrong direction is not visible in the day-to-day experience of the person who is moving. It is only visible when they arrive somewhere and find that it is not the place they were meant to arrive. The word that God stopped you to hear today is about the drift, about the specific adjustment that prevents the drift from becoming the destination. I need you to hear what I just said in a very specific way, because the word drift carries a quality of passivity that is not accurate to your situation. You did not drift because you were passive or careless. You drifted because you were moving, because you were doing what seemed right and what produced visible results in the short term and what managed the immediate pressures of your life. The drift happened inside of genuine effort. Inside of genuine commitment to the direction you were in. That is what makes this interruption necessary. Not because you have been lazy or unfaithful or spiritually negligent, because you have been moving hard in a direction that has gradually departed from the one the calling requires. And the cost of course correcting increases the longer the departure continues. The earlier the correction happens, the smaller the cost. And the correction cannot happen without a word that stops the movement long enough to show the departure. This is that word. This is the stop. I need to show you specifically what the drift looks like from the inside, because the person who is drifting does not experience it as drift. They experience it as normal life movement. So the description of it needs to be specific enough that you recognize it not as a general concept, but as the specific texture of your actual recent experience. The drift from a calling level direction shows up in 5 specific ways in the daily life of the person who is in it. The first is a progressive narrowing of the kind of thinking that originally marked the calling season. When the calling was fresh, a certain kind of thought was available, a certain quality of vision. The narrowing feels like maturity or realism, but is actually a symptom of the drift. The second way the drift shows up is in the specific things you have stopped saying out loud. There are conversations you had in the earlier calling season that you no longer have. Not because the topics became less important, because the conversations started to feel idealistic, because the distance between where you are and where those conversations were pointing began to feel too large to hold in daily speech. And so the conversations were replaced by more practical ones. And the more practical conversations maintained the drift by not disrupting it. The third sign is a specific quality in the way you respond to people who are still in the early calling season. The people who have the energy and vision that marked your calling season before the drift. You feel something when you are around them that is complicated, part recognition, part grief, part something that is almost envy, except that it is not envy of them specifically. It is a response to the contact with a quality of aliveness that you remember in yourself, and that is present in a muted form now. The fourth sign is the most telling. There are specific things you know you are supposed to be doing, or specific adjustments you know you are supposed to make, that you have been managing your way around for a measurable period of time. Not because you decided they were not important, because each day there is a sufficient reason to continue in the current trajectory and address the adjustment tomorrow, and the adjustment stays perpetually tomorrow. The fifth sign is this moment. The fact that you stopped, the fact that the word stop landed with weight rather than passing through as just another piece of content. The fact that you are still in this message rather than having moved past it. Those are not accidents. They are the chosen one, who has been in the drift, recognizing, at some level below the daily management, that the word has arrived that they have been both hoping for and carefully avoiding. I want to address what I know many of you are feeling right now as I describe these 5 signs, because the description of the drift is not received neutrally by the person who is in it. It is received with a specific mixture of recognition and resistance. The recognition says, yes, this is accurate. The resistance says, but the reasons I moved in this direction were legitimate. The work I have done in this direction has been real. The people who depend on me in this direction are real. If I adjust the course now, what happens to everything that was built in the drift direction? Those are fair questions, and they deserve honest answers. The honest answer is this: a course correction at the drift stage is not the same as destroying what was built. Most of what was built in the drift direction contains genuine value. The capacities developed, the relationships formed, the skills refined. All of those things come with you in the correction. What changes is not the investment. What changes is the direction in which the investment is being applied. The correction does not write off the years in the drift. It repositions them toward the alignment. The person who waits until the drift becomes a departure large enough to be catastrophic will face a much more costly correction than the person who makes the adjustment now, while the resources and capacities developed in the drift are still fully available and transferable. The cost of the correction is always lower earlier than later. This is the first time God has used the word stop directly in this sequence. The cost of the correction today is lower than it will be tomorrow. I want to speak now about the evidence that has been accumulating in your mind against the idea that a course correction is needed, because the drift does not happen in an evidential vacuum. The drifting person collects evidence that the current direction is the right one. evidence that the discomfort of misalignment is a normal feature of any demanding path rather than a signal of misalignment specifically. Evidence that the adjustment that keeps presenting itself is not actually required, or is not as urgent as it feels, or will create more problems than it solves. That evidence collection is not dishonesty. It is the mind protecting the investment that has been made in the current direction, because the investment is real. The years, the energy, the relationships, the reputation built in the current direction are all real. And the cost of adjusting a direction in which real investments have been made is real. But the evidence that the current direction is right is not the same as the evidence that the current direction is aligned with the calling. Those are two different questions. A direction can be working, producing visible results, generating momentum, and still be the direction of the drift rather than the direction of the calling. The evidence of working is not the same as the evidence of right. I need to tell you what God is specifically saying when God stops you mid-scroll to say, "Hear this before anything else," because the phrase "before anything else" is not rhetorical. It is a literal description of the position this word is supposed to occupy in your day. There are things you are going to do after this message. Some of them were going to feel more pressing than the adjustment this message is asking for. Some of them were going to seem like the responsible choice, the practical choice, the choice that manages the current situation effectively. And God is saying that every one of those things, as legitimate as they are, needs to be positioned after the response to this word. Not because they are unimportant, because the response to this word determines the quality of how everything else gets done. The person who responds to the course correction before doing anything else that day does not lose the productivity of the day. They recover the alignment that makes the productivity of the day go somewhere. The person who manages the day without responding to the course correction has a productive day that deepens the drift. This is what before anything else means, not after the meeting, not when things settle down, before anything else. I want to be specific about what responding to this word today actually looks like, because the chosen one who has been managing the drift has developed a very efficient system for acknowledging words like this one and then returning to the current direction. The acknowledgement feels like a response. It is not a response. It is a sophisticated deferral. The actual response has a specific character. It is the moment when the person doing the acknowledging stops making an inventory of how they will respond and makes one first action in the direction the response requires. One action, not a plan, not a decision about when to begin. One action taken today, before the other demands of the day have absorbed the urgency of the interruption. That single action is what breaks the cycle of acknowledgement and deferral cycle. It is what makes the stop permanent rather than temporary. I am going to tell you what that action looks like in a moment. Stay with me through the next part of this message. Type "stopped scrolling" in the comments if the 5 signs I described are present in your life. If the narrowing of vision, the stopped conversations, the complicated response to people still in the early calling season, the adjustment that stays perpetually tomorrow, and the weight of this message are all familiar from your actual recent experience, type it, because the person who names where they are in the comment section is doing something different from the person who reads and moves on. The naming is the beginning of the response, and the response is what this word is asking for. Stay, because what I am about to describe about the specific mechanism of the drift, why it happens in the chosen one rather than only in the unfaithful or the careless, and what the neurological research shows about how to make a course correction that actually holds rather than reverting within weeks, is the most important part of this message. Here is what the neurological research discovered about why course corrections fail in people who are genuinely committed to making them. The person who receives a course correction word and decides to act on it is not in a neutral neurological state when they make the decision. They are in a state of emotional activation. The recognition of the drift, the arrival of the word, the weight of the interruption, all of these produce a specific quality of emotional intensity that makes the decision to correct feel completely certain. The certainty is real in the moment. The commitment is genuine. And then, over the following days, the activation recedes. The emotional intensity that made the correction feel obvious and necessary is no longer present. The daily pressures of the life that was built in the drift direction reassert themselves, and the correction that was decided upon in the moment of activation quietly fails to materialize. This pattern is not weakness or unfaithfulness. It is a specific neurological dynamic that Dr. Daniel Barone identified and named. The state of emotional activation that produces the decision is not the same neurological state that sustains the decision across the friction of daily life. The decision was made in the synchronized state, the state of whole brain coordination that activation temporarily produces. And the implementation is attempted in the cross-interference state, the fragmented state that is the baseline for most people, in which the original certainty is no longer available to counter the resistance of the existing direction. The course correction that holds is the one that was decided upon in the synchronized state and implemented from the synchronized state, not just felt in the activated moment and then attempted from the fragmented baseline. Before I describe what Dr. Barone built, I want to show you something about the architecture of a failed course correction that most people who have been through one will recognize immediately. The person who makes a course correction decision from the activated state, which is the state produced by a word like this one, will typically take action for a period of several days to several weeks. During that period, the activated state is still partially present, and the actions taken in that period feel aligned with the decision. Then, the activation subsides. The actions that required the activated certainty to overcome the resistance of the drift direction become harder. The resistance is not stronger than it was before the correction. The resource that was countering the resistance, the activated certainty, has diminished, and without a replacement for that resource, the resistance wins. The replacement for activated certainty is not willpower. Willpower is finite and operates from the same fragmented state that produces the resistance. The replacement is the synchronized neurological state that the genius switch produces. The state in which the full capacity of both processing systems is available simultaneously, making the direction of the correction feel as obvious as it did in the activated moment, rather than as distant as it feels in the fragmented baseline. Dr. Daniel Barone built the genius switch specifically to solve this problem, not because he began with the concept of course corrections. Because the research kept arriving at the same conclusion across different domains, the genius switch is a daily protocol, a sequence of